Hello everybody and welcome back to Sweet and Sour Soccer, and of course championship predictions are back. It's another games week. I think we've also got a midweek game coming up on Tuesday, so those predictions will be out on Sunday as well for you, so look out for those. But let's get straight into these, waste no time at all, because it's looking like a good game week, to be fair. There's some really enjoyable games, and we're going to start off with Rotherham, who take on Ipswich. And now, of course, it is going to be a tough test for Rotherham. They're coming up against an Ipswich team who sits second in the table, and the only reason they sit second and not first is because, let's face it, just how good Leicester are. In fact, both of those teams before the international break were already starting to, pull away a little bit of a gap. It's going to be interesting to see Ipswich, will they come back with that same force? They'll be one of those teams that really didn't want the international break, would have wanted to just keep going, because let's face it, when you're on top like that, you just want the games to come quick and fast. You just want to keep playing, don't you? They come up against a Rotherham team who, obviously currently don't sit in a good position in the league, but I've said this before and I've put my neck out about it. I don't see Rotherham going down. I think it'll only be a slight save from not going down. I don't think they're going to do anything amazing. But one thing Rotherham do have is the potential to pull off a shock, and they also do have goals in them. They have a couple of players that are goal scorers, and they've already scored a couple of wonder goals this season. Having said that, though, I do expect Ipswich to get the job done, and I'm going to go for Ipswich 3, Rotherham 1. Let's move on to another game, Preston North End, who take on Millwall. And I spoke about Ipswich just now. They wouldn't have wanted the international break to come. I'm looking at Preston and I'm thinking they're probably a team that did want it to come. Obviously, 3 defeats on the bounce before the international break, especially after starting the season so well. Of course, let's not forget, at one stage early on, they did actually lead top of the table when Leicester did drop points. I think it was against Hull, wasn't it, that Leicester dropped points to. They'll be wanting to come back, Preston, and start getting things back into motion, putting some challenge on those top 2 positions, but also keeping the other teams at bay. No surprise, we're already seeing that the road to the the playoffs and getting in those playoffs is a very, very close affair. Let's talk about Millwall, a team that, just missed out on the playoffs last season. They would have wanted to go one better this season. It doesn't quite look like they're going to do that, so from what we've seen them so far of them this season. They're looking like, to me, just a very stable mid-table team, but they might have a tendency. They might be one of those teams that can push on as the season progresses. But when it comes to this, I think Preston, especially at home, will bounce back. And I'm going to go Preston 2, Millwall 0 in this game. Let's move on to speak about Hull, who take on Saints. And for me, the quality is there with Hull, and I'm going to stick my neck out. And if you did watch my updated championship predictions, if you haven't, go and check them out. But a little bit of a spoiler, Hull are one of the teams I put in the playoffs. Reason being, I think they have a great team, and I think something will click with them. Of course, they did bring in a lot of new heads, so it might take them a little bit of time to settle. But they're one of those that I'm keeping a close eye on, because I think second half of the season, they could really push on. But they come up against a Saints team who, again, have took a bit of time to settle. They haven't started the season absolutely flying. But the last 3 games, some quality is coming. They're starting to build a little bit of momentum. I think this is one of those games that could go either way, and I'm going to back Hull. I'm going to go 2-1 Hull. I don't know whether I'm just doing that partly because I want to try and convince you guys of my thought process that Hull are going to make the playoffs, but this one's going to be a close one. There's not going to be too much in it, in my opinion. Watch Saints go and win 3-0 now. Guys, let's move on to West Brom, who take on Plymouth. And, well, let's face it, before the break, West Brom had a game that they were wanting to probably just forget all about. Obviously, it was a 3-2 defeat to their West Midlands rivals, Birmingham City. But they're back at home against the Plymouth team who, look, they've done well at home, but you could stay in the league, actually, let's face it, just on your home form. But you've also got to try and build a bit of an away form and try and pick some points up. I do think it's going to be a little bit difficult for Plymouth to do this in this game. I do just have a feeling that West Brom are going to get the job done. I'm going to go West Brom 2, Plymouth 0 in this one, I think. Hi guys, just a quick one from me. Before we get back to the video, please can you do me a massive favour and hit that like button? And also, if you've not subscribed yet, please do. And let's get back to these championship predictions. Let's move on speaking about Swansea, a team which is, well, let's face it, far improved from where they started in the start of the season. Things are starting to pick a bit up for them now. And let's face it, it's not too surprising. They lost their two talisman up front, obviously, in Joel Perot. He obviously left, and the names escape me, but the other striker, he also went as well. Of course, he went off to the Premier League, didn't he? So it was going to take some time. But in the last few games, what I have seen and what I think Swansea fans will find promising is that goal scorers are starting to step up. Swansea have been scoring more goals now. And of course, it's no surprise that that has now produced better results. But this is a mammoth task, let's be honest. The Swan taking on the Fox. But Leicester just look brilliant, don't they? I mean, even players on their bench, you could argue, should be playing in the Premier League and could probably even start from some of those sides that are in the Premier League. This team is just way too good for the Championship. I think the manager's doing absolutely fantastic with them as well. The fans are in high spirits. I think Leicester get the job done as well. Leicester 3, Swansea 1. And to be honest, that's nothing against Swansea. This Leicester team is just too good. Let's move on speaking about Bristol City, who take on Coventry now. This is one of these games for me. I think, if someone says in the comments, no, Coventry are definitely going to win. If someone else says Bristol City are going to win, I'm probably not going to argue with you, to be honest, because it's going to be a close game. I think either team could win this. It might just come down to the managers. Obviously, Nigel Pearson, Mark Robbins, which out the two managers manages to get the tactics right on the day. It's just going to be those small margins, I reckon, that could separate these two teams. In terms of what I'm going to call, though, guys, I'm going to go for a draw. I'm going to call it down the middle just because it's that close a game. I'm going to go Bristol City 1, Coventry 1. I think that's a result that Coventry have liked this season as well, 1-1, or at least a draw in general. They've obviously drawn a lot of games. Guys, this one's going to be a very interesting game, isn't it? Especially with what's been happening with Birmingham City. But we have Carrick versus Rooney, which is going to be very interesting. For me, Michael Carrick is he's done it the right way for me. And what I mean by that is he went to Manchester United. He was a coach there. Rooney's kind of gone a bit more heavily straight into management. And although I don't think the Blues fans will be too happy with the appointment of Wayne Rooney, I do now expect the Blues fans to get behind him and give him their full support. I like Carrick, though. I do think, you look at Carrick, what he did with Middlesbrough last season, and then they started the season off terribly. And I think for a young manager to be able to turn that around, keep the fans on side, they've continued to fair play to them as well, to be fully behind him. I think that does show with Michael Carrick. Even if things don't work out at Middlesbrough, he's going to be a good manager in the future and continue to progress as a manager. Question's still out on Wayne Rooney, isn't he? He's got to get this one right, or he's going to start to fall into that Frank Lampard, possibly Steven Gerrard kind of category where you're just thinking great players, maybe not the best managers. But of course, maybe Rooney might do something that John Eustace didn't do so much, and maybe he will look to get this team on the attacking front foot a little bit more and maybe show off a little bit of a flair. Of course, they have got some players such as Dembele who can show some flair. But when it comes down to this, it's very early in Rooney's days. I'm going to think Borough will get the job done. I'm going to call it 2-1 to Middlesbrough in this one. Let's move on to be fair, guys, I'm really looking forward to this game, actually. It is Norwich who take on Leeds. And the reason I'm looking forward to this, and at least watching the highlights back on a Saturday evening, is purely just because there's going to be goals, isn't there? There's got to be goals in this one because this is two teams that both love a goal. Leeds already scored 17 this season and, have started to score more in recent times. Now they've got past the transfer window. Norwich, 21 goals. The main problem for Norwich, though, is they also love conceding goals. Norwich has actually already conceded 19 goals in the league. And that will be something that, let's face it, if they're going to push on, get into those playoff positions, they really do need to try and sort out. Will it be a change in formation? Will it be a tweak in tactics? Or will they just go, look, we're going to try and aim to outscore you? Who knows? But something does need to change with that, those many goals conceded. I think both teams will love a goal, and I could see this becoming a very open and attacking affair, to be honest. And I think for that reason, I'm going to go for a high-scoring 2-2 draw in this one. Let's move on. Speaking about Watford, who take on Sheffield Wednesday next. And of course, Sheffield Wednesday have changed their manager. Watford have stayed loyal to the manager. And look, the Sheffield Wednesday manager, names escapes me, but he's a young guy coming in. It's going to be a huge, huge challenge for him, isn't it, this job? But the only thing he's got to do is maybe, find something in the players, get something out of them, get some fight out of them, maybe just instill a little bit of belief and just really try and just grind out enough points to stay up. I mean, that is the task, isn't it? Let's face it. Anything more than that would be seen as an achievement. As I say, Watford surprisingly have stood by their manager despite not performing fantastic. Maybe just show where Watford are, unfortunately, as a club now. You look at their team, they definitely haven't, I wouldn't say, they definitely haven't got a team that can get them up into the Premier League anymore. That hasn't been true, has it, in recent times? But I do fancy Watford just to edge this one. I think it's going to be a narrow result, but I am going to go 1-0 to Watford. Let's move on to, I think we've got 3 games left. It is Stoke next taking on Sunderland, and a Sunderland team who are sitting, nicely in the table, aren't they? They've got good quality, good attacking flair, and a good young bunch who just don't really seem to fear anyone. I think, this is a Sunderland team who, after recent memory, I don't think they started the season quite the best, but things have really started to pick up maybe since those first 2, maybe 3 games. I just have it in my head that Sunderland didn't start the season great. Stoke, on the other hand, haven't started the season great, full stop, and that's where it ends, isn't it? This is a team for me which I'm looking at, and I look at the people on the team sheet and I'm thinking there are players there that should be doing a lot better, should be getting this Stoke team near the playoffs. Now, you could argue, is that the players' fault? Is it the manager's fault? Because, of course, it's a manager that hasn't done fantastic ever since he was brought in. And, of course, he was the former Sunderland manager, weren't he, Alex O'Neill? But I do wonder whether if Sunderland actually win, could they actually be the final nail in the coffin for him? Because I do think if the results don't pick up, they will change the manager sooner rather than later. I'm surprised it didn't actually come over the international break, to be honest. But I am going to back Sunderland narrowly. I think Sunderland will win this. I'm going to go Sunderland 2, Stoke 1. Let's move on. Speaking about Rovers, Blackburn Rovers, who take on a Cardiff City team who went into the international break, looking good, didn't they? They've definitely picked up from the start of the season and gone from looking like relegation candidates to, even pushing the playoffs at the moment. Blackburn, the same can't be said for them, but they did win before the break after 4 straight defeats. I think this is going to be... It's going to be an interesting game, this, because both teams at times have looked really good in this championship season, and both teams at times for me have looked not so good. So it might just come down to what version of what team turns up on the day. But I don't know. I'm going to call it down the middle. 1-1 draw. To be honest, guys, when I've been thinking of our predictions, I've had Blackburn to win. My first thought was, I changed that to then Cardiff, and then I'm thinking, right, down the middle. Right, last game, Huddersfield, who take on QPR, and of course, this is 19th position. Darren Moore obviously taking charge of Huddersfield now, versus 22nd place QPR. And QPR do really seem to be continuing their downhill spiral, don't they, really? This is going to be a tough one to call. It's going to be a big win, isn't it? If either of these teams get a big win, it's going to be huge for them, especially Huddersfield, already sitting in 19th. A win just takes them further away from those talks of possibly going down. QPR gets the win. It helps them too, doesn't it? You imagine that'll be enough to get them out of relegation, the relegation points, sitting in 22nd. Do I call another draw? I am. I'm going to call a 1-1 draw in this one. I think the points are going to be shared. Another 1-1. I think I've called 4 or 5 draws, guys, in this championship predictions, which let's be honest, doesn't really tend to happen, but oh well. Guys, if you have enjoyed the video, please do help me out. It really does help the channel when you do this, by the way. If you can, hit that like button. And please, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. It just means that next week, our predictions will probably be presented to you, and, you know, you can watch them again. Obviously, next week's video coming out Sunday as well with the following week's predictions, because we, of course, do have Tuesday games. And I will catch you on the next one, guys. Take care. Goodbye.